Okay, going to make a start without people, and if I need to, I'll add them in as they come in. Okay, afternoon everyone. My name is Ben Lewis, and I've been a primary school teacher with a PE specialism. So I've been working in schools for the last 10 years and with the Sports Partnership for the last 2. Today's webinar is going to be looking at assessment in primary PE. So hopefully by the end of it, you'll be able to take away some information on how to and what to assess children in PE. I will mention this man throughout part of the webinar today. His name is Andy Fretwell. He's the director at AFP. He's done numerous amounts of books, journals and articles in relation to assessment as well. And obviously his credentials are there if you'd like to look into them later on. So if I do mention him, this is who I'm talking about. One of the quotes I've taken from him right from the start, it's the last sentence that I see as the biggest part of this, and how it is essential to gather usable assessment information without creating an overwhelming administrative burden for teachers. And I think that's the key part there. We don't want to make your work as teachers harder in how you assess children, especially now as assessment, a PE assessment is not looked at by Ofsted. What they want to see is the journey of the child. And so hopefully by the end of today's, because we're going to look at how you can improve that journey through your assessment. 2 parts of the assessment that we're going to be looking into is assessment for learning, and we're going to compare that against assessment of learning. So assessment for learning is an effective assessment and how it's viewed to assess information to inform and direct teacher and student efforts in learning and learning improvements. These are normally broken down into 4 types. These are your question and dialogue, your feedback, sharing criteria, and peer assessment. On the other side, assessment of learning, this is used to record attainment at a particular time, which is normally done at the end of a unit, the term or the year. This is sometimes seen more commonly in secondary schools with GCSEs and BTECs. Both of these 2 types of assessments of learning can be broken down into more simplistic views, and these are formative assessment and summative assessment. Our formative assessment is assessment for learning, and it's looking at that constant dialogue between teachers and students to help promote learning. Our summative assessment is again our assessment of learning this time, and it's looking at doing something at the end of a unit or the year. These are 2 modes of assessment as teachers that you would do in everyday practice. There's nothing new there in terms of that assessment. I've just put in here a couple other forms of assessment that I think are quite relevant and seen within PE. So the first one is norm reference. This is where we normally compare a pupil to another, and this is most commonly seen and normally how we rank their ability. So who is the fastest child? Who's the best at football? Who's the best at netball? Okay, and as it says in there, how does that have an effect on a pupil's self-esteem? Does that make them feel better or worse knowing that they're not as good as someone else? A criterion reference. This is where we use it against a specific criteria, and we're rating them against our certain learning intentions. And our last one is our ipsative reference assessment. This one is looking at how you're allowing children to assess themselves, giving them an opportunity to work out what they need to do and how they can progress within their learning. So we're going to look at the assessment strategy, and these are the key parts in or the main parts of assessment. So we're just going to have a little bit of time looking at each one of these. So the first one is the who. So we need to work out who are we going to be assessing. Is it going to be a range of pupils? Are we going to particular groups? It could be your more able group, your SEN group, your pupil premium. Or are you just going to do a random sample? Looking at the what. So what are we assessing? So these individual outcomes from one learning domain or a combination of outcomes across 2 or 3 learning domains. We're going to get into the learning domains later on, but some examples of these, just to refresh minds, and that could be seen as physical skills, social skills, emotional development, sportsmanship. When we're looking at the when, most assessment should be ongoing and evidence does not need to be recorded on copious notes need to be made about it. Just looking back at Andy Fretfall's mention at the start, we're not trying to overwhelm teachers with loads and loads of paperwork and lots of the work to assessment. These learning activities or assessment tasks should be integrated in each lesson. When we're looking at the where, so as we said, most of assessment should happen within each lesson. Assessment is a form of communication as ongoing dialogue. So looking again at our assessment for learning and how it constantly provides information to the teacher about how to appropriately intervene to springboard progress. Looking at the why, so the majority of assessment practice will be carried out with the sole aim of improving pupil progress and attainment. Other assessment methods may be selected to check knowledge or understanding because the teacher is unsure of the extent of the pupil's learning. Assessment should have a clear purpose. If our assessment practice doesn't lead to some kind of improved practice, then we should be asking ourselves, why are we even doing this? Looking at the how, so there's lots of different assessment methods that you can use, but it's looking to see the appropriate method that is crucial to ensuring assessment is fit for purpose. So what fits you as a teacher, but also as your school as a whole. I've just put a little reflection slide on here because I feel like as teachers, it's something that we do constantly throughout lessons and end of units. So I just want you to have a little chance. And if you have the opportunity, can you put in the chat box just something that you remember about assessment when you was either a child or what assessment looks like at your current workplace? So I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes. If you don't mind putting just a couple of things into the chat box, it doesn't have to be long sentences. Just something that reminds you of assessment in PE. Thanks, Tom. Looking at verbal feedback, obviously you got a lot of that throughout your time at school. Good, I like that last one. To make you feel good, make a child feel good. Fitness testing, good. Tick boxes, yeah. Good, okay, so there's lots of different things that you could probably remember. Obviously, good peer assessment. Lots of things that you could probably think of, but it's just allowing you a chance to, if you reflect on your own practice or what you've seen, gives you a chance to see how children will be feeling during their assessment in PE. Okay, moving on to the key stage 1. What I've taken is the snippet from the national curriculum. So it's key stage 1 are saying that pupils should develop fundamental movement skills, become increasingly competent and confident, and access a broad range of opportunities to extend their agility, balance, and coordination, individually and with others. They should be able to engage in competitive, both against self and others, and cooperative physical activities in a range of increasingly challenging situations. So what I'd like you to do, again, in the chat box, can you write down some key words from this key stage 1 curriculum that you think make sense within a PE? So just in the chat box again, if you could just write down some key words that you've seen in this key stage 1 part of the national curriculum for PE. Good. Master basic movements, very good one. Fundamental movement skills, being confident, challenging, basic tactics, being competitive, good. Okay, brilliant. So, all good, simple movement patterns, liking it. So, as you seem to be really good and managed to find lots of different parts or keywords that you think in the Key Stage 1 part of the curriculum, we're going to have a look at the Key Stage 2 part now. So again, this is from the national curriculum, but this time it's the Key Stage 2 part. So I'm just going to read the first part, and what I'd like you to do again is just write down some keywords in that chat box that you take from this national curriculum for Key Stage 2. So pupils should continue to apply and develop a broader range of skills, learning how to use them in different ways and to link them to make actions and sequence of movements. They should enjoy communicating, collaborating and competing with each other. They should develop an understanding of how to improve in different physical activities and sports and learn how to evaluate and recognise their own success. Good, again, so simple movement patterns, a broader range of skills, learn how to use them. Compare their performances, good. Competing. Applying basic principles of attack and defending. Broader range, enjoy and linking activities, good, some really good ones there. Brilliant. Okay, so going to move us on to the next part now. All I've done is just taken some of those keywords that you've all managed to put down in the chat box and put them onto this slide. Some of those key ones that we're looking at there, which we all managed to mention through Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. At the start, I mentioned about the learning domains. So these are the domains of physical education. And Kirker and Laker broke these down into 4 main domains: psychomotor, affective, cognitive, and social. And the idea of these 4 domains were being able to see if children were able to use and effectively have all of these, which would then create a physically educated person. So becoming physically literate and having an understanding of how to use these all within physical education, sport, or physical activity. Although this type can be seen as an older method of domains, it still enables teachers to take a holistic approach to assessment by viewing the child through each of these 4 domains, which is going to take us on to a newer model of the domains. So Andy Fratwell created this one to have 3 parts. He based it around the hands, head and heart. So this more recent style enables a holistic approach as he focuses on these 3 domains. With the last one, there was 4. He puts the social domain going into the affective part as well. So the psychomotor domain looks at being physically active and seen in sports. So this is the doing, so the doing physically being. How you can be physically competent, show growth and development, being physically active and competitive. The cognitive domain, so it's just what you can see during physical education. Being able to make decisions, having a deeper understanding, being confident, showing tactics. The affective domain, so can be seen through physical activity and even health. So the feeling of being physical. So the social and emotional side, the involvement, engagement, the attitude, characters and values, and even the healthy, active lifestyle. What Andy Fratwell's done is he's used those key parts from the national curriculum and put them into his 3 domains. So what you can see on this screen here is the Key Stage 1 version. Again, just putting everything from the national curriculum for Key Stage 1 into these 3 different parts. One of the key parts I take away from this is looking at the doing, so the hands part of this model. And the top one is develop fundamental movement skills. But in the brackets, it says specifically master basic movements, including running, jumping, throwing, and catching. And it does lead me to think, how many children at the end of Key Stage 1 have mastered those movements? And this is what we need to think of when we are assessing our children. Not just the hands part, but looking at the head. Are they able to apply the skills? Or the heart? Are they able to develop confidence, work well with others or with individually? Again, he's done this with Key Stage 2. So he's broken it down into those 3 domains. Looking at these allows you to see a clear part of the national curriculum, have a clearer understanding of how to use it to hopefully create physically literate children. What I've put on here is one of a snippet of our new schemes of work. And we're looking at the child development side. And this part here can be seen as an end of term part. So this could be used as assessment of learning. So what we're looking for, we linked it back again to the 3 domains. So the hands, head, and heart. And if we link it back to Key Stage 1, because we're looking at coordination, it links back to the hands of showing coordination, the deciding side is the head, so being able to apply the skills, and then promoting happiness, and that moving around can make you feel good, which again links to the heart side, so having that confidence and competence. This snippet is from this part of our lesson plans, and hopefully we're going to continue creating these new plans that's going to have both areas that can be used to see of assessment of learning, so our child development section at the bottom, and our assessment for learning, which is our success criteria. So as we mentioned at the start, our assessment for learning is our success, or at the moment is our success criteria, which is going to be done for that lesson. So how we've got our exceeding, expecting, emerging, what we're looking for in that specific lesson. But our assessment of learning, looking at the child as a whole, is done at the end of the term, which is our child development section at the bottom there. What we want you to do is to be assessing more than just the physical side. So seeing that child as a whole and looking not just how they feel, but also how they are deciding cognitively what they're looking for. I just have a little final statement here. So it can be seen that we've forgotten what PE is about, and how as schools we focus on sports or against others as a way to measure and assess child's ability. We have the opportunity to create lessons based upon assessments looking into the main domains of learning with the statements of the national curriculum to help produce physically literate children who remain physically active for their life. And that's the key part there. We want our children to remain physically active. This is something that the GSP group are looking into by creating new assessments and schemes of work to help schools. So this last part here of the slide, it's a little chance to have any questions, chance to reflect, or if anyone's got to like to share some good practice of their school in assessment, or even ideas that they've seen in assessment.